And welcome into the Upside Sports Network for the 2025 NFL free agency update. A lot of things going on right now in NFL free agency. The most notable right now breaking at this hour is Cooper Kupp has been released by the Los Angeles Rams. Ultimately, the Rams were trying to get some compensation for a guy they knew was no longer going to be on their team. He still does hold some value in the marketplace. That's why there was some thought that maybe they could get a team to bite and give him up a fifth, sixth, seventh round pick. Ultimately, teams were smart enough to realize that this is a team that wasn't going to hold Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp. So why go ahead and make the trade and just help out the Rams and just accumulate more draft assets? The Rams have done really well with drafting late and using those low-round draft picks to really bolster their roster. The first-round picks that they traded away to bring in Matthew Stafford and other pieces, ultimately they didn't really feel the loss of because of how well they drafted. So instead of helping out the Rams recoup some value for Kupp, go ahead and just let him hit free agency and hope for the best. Now, where do we think he could ultimately end up? I already see a couple of you guys in the chat talking about both of the Texas teams, the Houston Texans, who seem to be going after every wide receiver underneath the sun, and the Dallas Cowboys, who do need a number 2 wide receiver. The Cowboys, meanwhile, have been connected to a couple other receivers. Devontae Adams was one such guy, but he is no longer on the board. DeAndre Hopkins obviously has gone off the board to the Baltimore Ravens. And one other name that could be coming back is Brandon Cooks. I seriously doubt that. It sounds like Cook's camp really wasn't happy with how the Dallas Cowboys really utilized him last year. So he says he'll be back in Dallas if they use him the right way. Tells me that that's not really one of his top destinations. There are like 5 teams in on Brandon Cook. 2 of them, I think, are real shots here. The New England Patriots and the Green Bay Packers. Curious to see if the Packers actually invest in an outside free agent via as far as big bucks here. But he'd be a nice get for them, kind of a more healthy version, if you will, of Christian Watson. But as far as Cooper Kupp goes, he certainly is still a very good player. How much does he have left in the tank? How much does he have injuries kind of sapping his last few years here is going to be a question. For the Texans, I don't really think they need a Cooper Kupp. I think they'd be fine with the receivers that they already have in-house. Maybe even draft a guy in the 3rd or 4th round just to kind of give you a number 3 receiver that you can turn to. Of course, Diggs is still out there. There are connections as to the Dallas Cowboys there as well. But we'll see where Cooper Kupp goes. I don't think it's necessarily limited to just the Texas teams. I think there are a ton of teams out there that could be an interest here. One team that I'm surprised hasn't acted yet as far as adding a receiver is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this is a team that had 2 different receivers drafted in the first or higher up in the draft anyway, that ultimately have had legal issues in the last 2 years. Rashee Rice, and now this year in Xavier Worthy. Of course, Hopkins is now leaving, going to the Ravens. They need to upgrade their wide receiver room. They did bring in Hollywood Brown, but I'm still looking for them to get a playmaking wide receiver, somebody who can be a number 1 type receiver for them. Now, maybe they're hoping Rice could come back, and maybe his legal troubles might be behind him. Worthies are just starting. And we'll have to see how the NFL ultimately handles his situation. Sounds like they're not going to be pursuing charges on Xavier Worthy, but either way, that was receiver room needs a little bit of an adult in the room, if you will. Somebody who you know is going to be there that can handle their shit and be able to not mess it up the way that Rice and Worthy really have done each of the last two off seasons. So we'll see what happens. A lot of headlines shurring around right now. Of course, in the quarterback market, where does Aaron Rodgers land? Sounds like it's going to be Pittsburgh. If I had to pick one right now, Giants are still in the discussion. Vikings, to a very, very limited extent, are still on the periphery of that discussion. I'm leaning towards him heading towards the Pittsburgh Steelers. But appreciate you guys joining us. Welcome in Rafe, Ethan, Sean, Hank. Appreciate you guys joining us once again. If the Texans pull Kupp, you'd be ecstatic. I would be too if I were a Texans fan. Cowboys, a lot of connections, former coaches. Cowboys have worked a lot with that relationship aspect in the past. You look at a lot of the former Vikings that were on the team the last couple of years. They had a lot of Vikings coaches on their staff. Same thing with the Rams. That's why they were able to get a couple other players anyway from the Rams over the last couple of years. And I wonder if we're going to see a continuation of that trend with the Cowboys. Think of some guys who have worked with Eberflus in Indianapolis and in Chicago. I really don't think there'd be any great free agents that would be a good pursuit for the Cowboys in that regard. But the Cowboys have really utilized that as a way to recruit players more than anything else. Now, we all know Jerry Jones isn't going to spend at the top of the market or anything like that. So I thought there was some thought that maybe they could go big for a receiver like a Devontae Adams to try to really solidify the outside spot. They still need to get a cornerback in here after losing Jordan Lewis to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Some of the biggest contracts we've seen, some of the best contracts we've seen have gone to teams like the New England Patriots and the Arizona Cardinals. Patriots getting Milton Williams. I think he's going to be a really good get for Mike Vrabel and that defense. I think it's going to free up those linebackers to do what Vrabel wants, and I think that defense is going to be very good. Now, they still need to get more playmaking on the outside for the New England Patriots. I imagine that's where they'll target in the draft. We may end up doing a mock draft here in the next week or so as we gear up for the 2025 NFL Draft as well. All right, Rafe, sign Kupp and Zeitler and Boom ready for the draft outside of just depth, off-season workout guys. Again, I'm not sure how much Kupp really has left. I'm not sure how valuable he would be compared to, say, whoever you bring in with, say, a third-round draft pick. Now, not to say that Kupp still doesn't have something left in the tank, but I'm saying that the contract that you'd have to sign Kupp to versus what you'd be giving a third-round receiver as far as finances, you might be better off spending that money elsewhere, solidifying that offensive line. To me, the Houston Texans, the primary goal for them has to be solidifying that line, whether that be in the draft, whether that be adding a couple of free agents. But to me, that line is still the biggest question mark. And Stroud really had some regression last year because he couldn't stay upright. He had happy feet all season long. And the way you really solve that is, of course, getting in the quarterback's ear and saying, dude, calm down. I get it. You're under duress. But at a certain point, calm your feet down. Take the hit, make a play, or get rid of it a little bit faster. Speed up the clock. Process. Get into the right protection. Give yourself quick routes. Hot reads. That's how you really solve an inept offensive line, and he showed the inability to handle it as of yet. So we'll see if he makes the proper adjustments this offseason. I think he's still got the sky as the limit for him. I think he's going to be a great quarterback in the NFL. But last year he showed he was a little bit more human than I think Texans fans really want to admit. He's got some development to really go. Rafe, that don't mean anything. Bosa took $2 million more instead of playing with his brother. Connections ain't everything. True. But I would say Buffalo is still a very good team. San Francisco, on the other hand, is looking like a former contending team that is trying to make one last big swing at it. And the nostalgia of it all wasn't exactly worth it for him going back to San Francisco. Commanders made a huge trade for Tunsil. They did, helping improve their offensive line, protecting their rookie sensation quarterback in Jaden Daniels. We'll see how they do in year 2 with him at the helm. You know what they say, no matter what, there's an upside. Sports Network, thank you, Hank. Surely the Cowboys ain't down bad for a wide receiver since they traded a fourth for a wide receiver. Wait. Well, true. I mean, they did bring in Mingo. I think that was more flailing at the deadline by Jerry Jones than anything else. I thought the trade was terrible at the time. I had said so in the video that I posted here on YouTube. If you guys want to check out that one from back in October, I invite you guys to. But that trade was not going to do anything for the Cowboys. It wasn't going to get Dak Prescott back healthy. The defense wasn't going to all of a sudden play better because you got a number 3 receiver, possibly number 4, depending on how you view Tolbert and Cooks at the time. But CeeDee Lamb is, where the bread is buttered right now for the Dallas Cowboys. They did sign Javonte Williams to help in their running back room. I think he is an upgrade over what Ezekiel Elliott really has left in the tank. I think he's a good third down running back, a good backup who could spell a starting running back as we go through the season. But they really need to add a true number 1 running back. There are a couple still left out there. I wonder how much Nick Chubb is going to cost. I'm wondering how much he has left in the tank. To me, this kind of smacks a little bit here of what Derrick Henry was last year in free agency. They should have signed Derrick Henry. I think the Cowboys, even with their injury issues last year, might have even made a postseason run or at least gotten to a wild card round if they had made the decision to bring in Derrick Henry. Ultimately, they decided they didn't want to spend that type of money, and he obviously went on to Baltimore where he had a great, and I mean a truly great season there. But we'll have to see how this thing really shakes out for Dallas. Try to catch up on a few of your comments here. 49ers releasing Floyd because they thought Bosa was secured is so funny. Well, I'm not sure Floyd was necessarily the answer for them either. I'm sure they're trying to restructure a lot of that roster this year, but we shall see. You're excited about Saturday and opening day? True. I'm excited about today. I'm going to watch the Rangers spring training game. I know we cover quite a bit of baseball here, so I'm going to be watching that game. Just kind of enjoy some spring training baseball. You think Chubb should go to the Steelers? I think he'd be a great fit with Najee Harris now going to the formerly San Diego, now Los Angeles Chargers. Getting rid of Tunsil and Green this offseason was amazing for us. I will say this. Freeing up money, freeing up spots on that offensive line to bring in some outside reinforcements, I think is great for that team. Even if you think, say, Tunsil is still a great left tackle, I think just shaking that offensive line up is going to be good for that room anyway. Now, obviously, you still want to have high-quality performers there, and some people have their thoughts as to how valuable Tunsil really is. But for me, you're saving yourself quite a bit of money and allowing yourself to have the flexibility to solve some of your issues by the free agent dollar, by bringing in outside free agents. Or where I think they should be investing is in that draft, is really solidifying that offensive line with maybe 2, maybe 3 high picks in the draft going towards offensive line help. Say maybe your first round pick, maybe your 3rd and 4th round pick, but don't wait until the 6th, 7th round to really address that offensive line. And I don't think they will, but to me that offensive line is the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd priority there. Wash passes prime cheap, fits Jerry's profile. Well, I will say this. Williams is a good running back as far as, a backup running back. As far as, Chubb, I still think he's got maybe a good year left. I'm not sure it's a guaranteed good year, but I think if things break the right way and he doesn't break down during the year, he could still have a really good, really strong NFL season. Do I think he's as good as Derrick Henry was entering free agency? No. I think the injury issues showed kind of the human side of the NFL. But if you're not going to draft somebody high in the draft, which it doesn't sound like the Cowboys are going to do, Genty, of course, could be off the board by the time the Cowboys pick. And it sounds like the Cowboys might ultimately be looking to trade down a couple of different times in the draft to really recoup some draft assets. They were rewarded with getting 3 compensation picks. So the Cowboys, I think, are going to be very active in the draft and solving their issues there. And I think their big offseason addition is going to be getting that contract extension done with Micah Parsons. I honestly would turn around and flip Micah Parsons. I know that's not a popular sentiment from Cowboys fans, but I honestly think you could get really 2 high-quality picks, maybe even some additional compensation. Say you get a first-round pick, maybe get a second round and another second-round pick out of it. I think there's an argument to be made. You could get 2 firsts for Micah Parsons in this marketplace, especially after you saw the price for Myles Garrett. Now, of course, you're still going to have to pay Parsons if you do acquire him, but I think the Cowboys would be wise to free up some of that money. They aren't a contending team. This is not a team that's going to win a Super Bowl this year. This is not a team that's going to win the Super Bowl next year. I think it was a mistake for them to sign Dak Prescott. And, by the way, if Dak Prescott played out this season, or didn't play out the season before they restructured his contract, they could have traded him away and been able to stay in pretty much the same financial position they're already in. They didn't have too much dead money attached to him. Now that they've restructured the deal, if they were going to move on from Dak Prescott, that would have to happen after the season, when that contract, again, would be in a very similar situation. tear it all down, bring yourself in a quarterback. There is some discussion about the Cowboys being the landing spot for Shedeur Sanders, possibly giving him 1 year to kind of learn from Dak Prescott how to handle things a little bit more professionally. I don't think that's going to be his problem. I think he's putting on a little bit of a show for these teams to show where he does not want to be drafted to. I think Dion is behind the scenes working with his son to kind of steer him to where he thinks would be a good spot for him to land. I think Archie Manning and Eli Manning did something very similar years and years ago when he really did not want to go to the San Diego Chargers, steered his way to New York. Instead of Dion going out there and being the face of this kind of thing, I think he's wanting his son to handle this by having poor interviews with a lot of teams that are not exactly high-quality teams or teams that are known to develop quarterbacks. And if he goes to a good team, maybe sits behind a quarterback for a year, maybe that would really help Shedeur learn the NFL and could be that next, what you're hoping is the next Patrick Mahomes. Do I think he's going to be that level of player? No, I don't. Do I think he's going to be at the level of Jaden Daniels his rookie season? No, I don't. I think Shedeur Sanders, though, has really good arm talent. I think he's had a terrible offensive line his entire career in college football. He has not had a running game his entire career in college football. But he could be a guy that falls in the draft and is trying to engineer where he ultimately lands. And there are rumblings Dallas could be that spot, in which case next offseason you trade Dak Prescott to a team like, say, the Cleveland Browns, who inevitably never find a quarterback. You at least get an adult in the room in Dak Prescott. Maybe you get a first-round pick out of the Browns because their ineptitude as a GM and front office there. And you just see what you can do. That'd be an interesting way for Jerry Jones to go about it, but it'd be a very realistic way of saying, hey, this team is not a Super Bowl bound team, and we need to kind of reset our clock here, reset our contention window. We are kind of like the San Francisco 49ers. We are not going to be competing this year. At best, we might be a wild card team, and sure, any team can make a run, but I just don't see it being overly likely either. All right, everybody outside looks at Tunsil's positive, but he was a terrible role model, gave up $45 billion over the next 2 years is what's needed. That's kind of what I was thinking for the Texans, about freeing up money more than anything else. Cooper Kupp, good player, but past his prime. I think he'll be a good fit for a rebuilding team like the Patriots, who are a wide receiver needy team like the Browns. He's not going to Cleveland. I do not think so. Jacksonville would make a little bit of sense. They do need a wide receiver there, in my opinion. I think he'd be a really good fit for Trevor Lawrence. That's another quarterback situation I'm keeping an eye on. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is the answer anymore. I think we really got the resounding answer that early this year when Trevor Lawrence just showed the ineptitude at quarterback, all the things that he just not had or has not learned, and now has gotten a big long-term deal. And I think they're going to stick with him, sure, but I don't think he's the answer there in Jacksonville. And Mac Jones has shown the ability to be as good as Trevor Lawrence in that system so far, and I think they're going to be splitting playing time at some point somewhere down the line, or at least whoever is going to be the backup quarterback, because I don't think Trevor Lawrence is no longer the answer there. Kupp to the Panthers, that'd be an interesting one. I would like that one. You think they could get 2 firsts from Michael Parsons, or they'll trade him for an injury-prone 31-year-old defender in 1 pick? Shades of the Luka Doncic trade? I don't think they would do that. I would say that they could get 2 firsts for Michael Parsons. Bengals asking for a first and more for Hendrickson is crazy. He is still a very good pass rusher. Is he one of the best 5 in the league? I don't think so. I think he's in that neighborhood of 10 to 15. But as far as a first and change for Hendrickson, it might be a little bit rich, especially when you have Micah Parsons, who is still out there as well. I tried telling everyone that T-Law wasn't the guy everybody was painting him to be. I watch him plus every year. He's just a starter, not amazing. I think in baseball, there's a term as a 4A player. So you get a player that's in AAA and just absolutely mashes, but every single time he's called up to the majors, he just can't hack it. And that's kind of what I see in Trevor Lawrence. He's too good to be a backup. He's not going to hold a clipboard all his life, but he'd be really good as a high-end backup that could come in and get you a couple wins. Have the ability to throw for 400 yards in a game and carry your team to victory once or twice in a season. But when you really push the envelope for him, say, hey, we think this guy has what it takes to be our starting quarterback, that's when his faults really show and he can't really hack it. So he's kind of the equivalent of a Major League Baseball 4A player there as well. All right, let's flip this thing around and just kind of check in, see what's going on in the marketplace right now. Let me update our page here. Steelers are waiting the decision of Aaron Rodgers. Dove Kleiman. Bengals are seeking a first-round pick and more for Hendrickson. Plus, you're going to have to give up a contract extension. NFL basically saying goodbye to Cooper Kupp in LA. He's still got some speed, I will say that. How much speed remains to be seen. Injuries could continue to be an issue as well. A little bit of quarterback news. The Commanders did bring back Marcus Mariota. I think he's a really good backup for Daniels, kind of the same type of a player. 1 year, $8 million, I think is a fairly good deal for him. Because I do think Daniels is a little bit more of an injury risk than, say, a traditional pocket quarterback. A lot of talk right now about Cooper Kupp, as there should be. A lot of small deals today. Going to update it one more time. Head over here. Bosa goes to the Bills. We saw the trade of C.J. Gardner-Johnson to the Texans for Kenyon Green. Darnold to the Seahawks. You guys tell me, what was the better quarterback move we've seen so far? Is it Fields to the Jets? Darnold to the Seahawks? Which of those two moves would you rather have? It's kind of funny how Fields turns down the Steelers or doesn't want to wait around for the Steelers and says, hey, the Jets are a better situation as well. I mean, the Jets have been in a terrible spot anyway for quarterbacks for decades, it seems like. And yet, here they are. They get Justin Fields, a 26-year-old quarterback. Now, the Seahawks, they basically trade away all of the weapons that Darnold really has to work with. Question marks about that offensive line. They do have Walker as far as a running back, so that's good to at least have a security blanket there. And Jigba's going to be a good receiver, of course, but they still need more weapons for Darnold to throw to. Of course, who does Fields have to work with outside of Garrett Wilson? Rafe, Darnold, because he's younger in a more win-friendly environment. McDonald, the head coach there, I think is going to have that defense playing solid. That division, the 49ers are down. Rams are trying to hang on for some success. The Cardinals, of course, they're up and down, I'll put it this way, but they're not a prolific team. So I think Darnold is in a good spot to try to win. Meanwhile, let's look at the division for the Jets. Dolphins with a healthy Tua should be good. They did sign Zach Wilson to be the backup there, so they at least have an NFL competent quarterback back there to at least handle things should he get another concussion. Honestly, I think Tua should have already retired by now. But hey, I ain't Tua. You're in the division with the Bills, who are still very good, even in a down year. In a year that they were supposed to be trimming salary, they still looked like one of the best teams in the NFL last year, all because of Josh Allen, who did get his extension. But which deal do you think was better? Fields to the Jets or Darnold to the Seahawks? Lucas, Darnold has nothing really to work with. Fields is in a very good spot. Still a number one defense. A decent O-line. There is some cap left after Rodgers and Devontae. It's like $90 million. I will say that offensive line does have some departures there as well. Smith is leaving in free agency. I think he could ultimately wind up back in Dallas to kind of finish his career. They need a left tackle after Guyton really screwed the pooch this past season. I think they'll give him one more opportunity, but they're going to push him to try to earn that spot. Maybe sitting behind Smith for a year will help him get better with his hand technique, and we'll see how he performs. But I think there's really only one guaranteed starter on that Cowboys offensive line. Let me pull this up for you guys. In case you guys are unfamiliar with this site, this is Over the Cap and kind of gives you an update to the minute anyway as far as where contracts really stand with clubs. So you look at the Dallas Cowboys, for instance, the salaries that they have going. Just look at the salaries that will likely be coming off the books. This year they're sitting in with about $55 million in space. with Dak making a base salary of $2, and with the restructuring, they've got $50 million in that bonus right now. But one guy who's probably not going to be around much longer is Terrence Steele. I think this is the final season for him. Right now, he's counting for about 18 mil against the cap. I think this is the final year that we see Terrence Steele in a uniform for the Dallas Cowboys. So in 2026, I do believe they will cut him, at which point it'll save him roughly about $10 million against the cap that year, and then, of course, another $20 in the year following. But let's go back to this year. They're trying to add to this season. If you're Jerry Jones, you're not necessarily psyched about the idea of rebuilding or trying to tear this thing down. Looking at this roster, though, all your guys are above 25 years old. They should be in the prime of their careers. This is not a team that should be in a rebuilding situation. This should be a team that's perennially contending for a Super Bowl with this type of a roster, with how you've paid out your salaries. And yet they're not there. Looking at these contracts, which ones would you say are value deals? Zach Martin, of course, is retired. Donovan Wilson had the major injury, hasn't been the same. You could say the same about Diggs. I think that's just a matter of time until they cut him. The only reason I think he's still on the roster is because he's a really good ball-hawking cornerback, and you want to see him try to do that one more season. If he can do it, great. Maybe he stays on the roster. If not, he's gone after this year. Terrence Steele hasn't been the same since his big injury. I think he's guaranteed to be gone. But as far as CeeDee Lamb, that contract right now, as good as he's been, as rich as that contract is, still looks like a bargain with what you've given him right now. And he's only counting 15 this year, but look how big that number jumps up the following year, up to 38. The next year, 41. The next year, down to 21. But again, that's when he's going to be looking for an extension at that point. So you basically got a 3-year run with CeeDee Lamb, and then he'll be 29. Dak Prescott at that time would be 35 years old. We speculated earlier in this one about how Dak Prescott could ultimately be let go next offseason. I thought that was a possibility before they restructured his contract this offseason and then go with a rookie like Shedeur as their quarterback. But instead they decided to restructure, means he's going to stay on this roster. But if you go to 2026, what happens if you cut him? You cut him as a June 1 cut. What does that do to your cap space? Before, you're at 47. After, all the way down to 27. Takes 27 out of there if you designate him as a pre-June 1 cut. But look what it does. Frees up almost $70 million in cap in 27. Now what happens if you do it as a post-June 1 cut? Now you added yourself, what, $40 million in room that year? And gave yourself another 10 the following? Let's go ahead and do a different one. Let's say we trade him as a post-June 1 trade. $40 million in space. That's assuming they draft a quarterback this year or next year. Dak Prescott, I'm sure, would be able to fetch you a pretty penny in a trade with a team that perennially struggles to get a quarterback. That'd be one way to really save some salary going forward. And then again, you cut Terrence Steele. Trayvon Diggs, goodbye. Zach Martin, goodbye. He's not going to be around. His cap number's in retirement anyway. Donovan Wilson, I think, would be gone. Malik Hooker, gone. And then you got to make some decisions on guys that are going to have free agent deals coming up as well. Mingo, I think, probably is gone as well at that point. He hasn't shown anything to me that he's worthy of staying on this roster. But look at how much money you free up just by doing those things. Now let's say you make the decision and say, hey, we'd rather keep Dak Prescott, so what do? Well, even if you keep him at that point, look at how much money you still have to spend. Now you're still going to add pieces to this team, so that's going to take 55-ish away from this season. You're going to have some long-term deals put in there as well. So you're not going to have the full 85 to work with next offseason. You're not going to have the full 141 after that. But there's a path to having significant salaries come off the books here in a relatively short amount of time. Alrighty, let's try to catch up on a few of these comments here. Rafe, the Bills are a playoff team. Dolphins were healthy. When healthy are a playoff team. Pats are spending big money and soon will be playoff teams. So the Jets just need to start over. I don't know about that. I think they're kind of pushing that button a little bit here with Justin Fields coming in. He's 26 years old, learned a whole lot in the NFL. Would you say he's better than a rookie quarterback coming in? I would say his experience, the learned experience at the NFL level, would be invaluable to him. But he's got to show more dynamic ability from a quarterback in the pocket as opposed to just being a running quarterback. So if he's able to do that, the Jets could really have something. If they don't, I'd say Darnold has an easier path to the postseason than Justin Fields. Doesn't mean I think he's a better quarterback. Just means that I think Darnold, even with the issues with the Seahawks as far as how much talent they'll have around him, I think Darnold's going to be in a better spot to make it to the postseason this year. Lucas, Michael, do you think the Finns will trade Tyreek? Not this season. I don't think we'll see it right now. I don't think there's a whole lot of talent left out there, though. But if there was a trade, Cowboys are looking for a number 2 receiver. This is the type of player that they do like to go after. Big names, players like this. Cancel this one. Let me see if it does it for a trade. They used to have the ability to make trades in this thing. So there is a trade calculator as well. So let's kind of do it this way. So say the Finns are looking to trade Tyreek Hill. And let's say the team is the Cowboys that are looking for somebody to partner with CeeDee Lamb. All right. Let's say you include say you throw Tolbert in this deal. Not a whole lot of value going either way according to the calculator here. Say you give up a 5th rounder. I think that'd probably be a little rich according to this. It'd be tough to come up with a trade in the NFL because they do it very differently than other sports do it as far as their calculators here. Would I do this if I was Miami? No, I'd hold on to Tyreek Hill. There's no reason to make a trade. But if there was, you could see something along those lines. And I don't think there's a need to save the $30 million right now in a trade anyway. So I don't think this is overly likely at all. All right. If the Cowboys trade Dak and Parsons after the dead money rolls off, they would be set up for Super Bowls year after year. If they draft and develop the right quarterback to fill that spot and the right defenders to fill the losses of Micah Parsons as well. B. Skrills, hey, hell, Cowboys might do better than the 49ers. I don't know what's going on with them. Niners are just trying to get rid of some older contracts and kind of reset their books right now more than anything else, and just see where where everything stands after this coming season. Once they get to that point, they'll figure out what path they want to take forward. But I think this year is just about getting off of some salaries, investing in some really good draft picks, and giving them time on the field to really develop this year. I think this is a development year for the 49ers and trimming salary year for them. 49ers won't have a plan in place until after the Purdy extension, if they give him an extension, that is. They are talking about Chubb might go to the Cowboys when free agency. I still think Chubb would be a nice get. Would I still prefer a younger running back to come in like a Genty? Absolutely. But I think Chubb, if you're not going to draft Genty in the first round, you draft somebody in the 3rd round, 4th round, somewhere in there, one of those 5th round picks that you have, you utilize it on a running back. You're not getting somebody that's going to be a 3-down running back at that late in the draft. You're going to be able to bring in a Chubb who takes the majority of the carries. Your 3rd, 4th round pick takes the other carries. And if there's an injury or you need somebody in a pass-catching role, that's what Javonte Williams would be there for. Let's see here. If they do any of that, it'll be post-June 1. It would be stupid not to. Well, I think it'd be about saving the money for future years. So, for instance, kind of go back to our cap calculator here. So say they go into this into 2026, because I think they've made most of their decisions already. If you cut them as pre-June 1 cuts, okay, sure, you're still going to have $76 million in space. Now, you're still going to spend money this coming season, so that number is probably going to go down to like 46-ish. If you restructure Dak at that point, give him a base salary, then you give yourself all kinds of room there if you're going to keep Dak Prescott as your quarterback. If you don't, you still have money to spend, but look what it does to your 2027 cap space. Let's undo these moves just to kind of show you where everything's at. Currently, you're looking at 47. So you'd be gaining roughly about 30 mil in space by declaring it as a pre-June 1 cut. And you know the Cowboys are never active in free agency anyway. You're going to have the Parsons extension if you don't trade him. So kind of keep that in mind as well. Parsons would be a UFA. You'd have to add him to this mix. Deron Bland would be a UFA. Ferguson would be a UFA. Tyler Smith, you'd have to figure out a contract for. So they would be focusing on their own guys before they'd spend in free agency anyway. In order to get that money available, that's why you do those cuts and declare them as pre-June 1 cuts, because then you get all that savings for the 27 season. Yeah, there isn't really a good trade calculator for the NFL. It does kind of suck. I know that Fanspo we use for the NBA is great. The one for the NFL on that same site is hot garbage, to put it mildly. Donovan Wilson probably retired by then. I think the injuries are catching up to him already. This might be the last team he plays for. All right, let's head back over to X and just see if anything is happening right now. Nothing big anyway. Joe Milton trade could be coming for some team out there. Maybe the Cleveland Browns decided to go with the Joe Milton experience. That'd be one team I think would be a good fit. I think the Giants would be smart to do this. Rafe, I want your thoughts on this because I'm not sold. Zeitler or Reisner for Texans. To me, if we get Zeitler, then we draft Booker, Collins, Ratledge, but Reisner makes the Ratledge pick unnecessary. I'm not sure how many more good years Zeitler really has left, honestly. And so I would still be prioritizing drafting, offensive line help. I always lean more towards younger offensive linemen anyway, and then supplement afterward. So I don't think adding a free agent in as far as an offensive lineman necessarily precludes them from making some moves outside of that. I would like to see them go the offensive line, with 3 of their top 4 picks anyway, even if they did bring in an outside free agent, because I still think they're going to need that depth there, and there's nothing wrong with having an offensive lineman learn from one of the best. I think that's where their biggest improvement needs to come from, is with that offensive line. And whatever they have to do to make sure that offensive line is good this year, one of the top 5, top 10 in the league, whatever the case may be, it certainly can't be what it was last year. I mean, we saw what that did to Stroud and his confidence, really derailed your franchise cornerstone, your pillar of your organization for the next 10, 15 years by not having a good offensive line. So that's going to be the first, second, and third priority there. I would prioritize it significantly above a wide receiver, even though they continue to add wide receivers to the room. I think they got a good mix of wide receivers. I think they could still add one more. But to me, offensive line is where it begins and ends for the Texans. You think you'd rather have Zeitler and draft Booker and Rutledge? Honestly, any and all improvements to the offensive line. I'm not restricting any improvements there. Zeitler for 1 year is fine with me, and then let Rad sit behind him for a year, which is why I would rather do that. Again, there's nothing wrong with having a rookie come in and learn from one of the best. Even if Zeitler is older, only going to be on the roster for a year, you're going to need somebody to come in there if he does get hobbled. And there's nothing to say that while Zeitler's in there for the majority of the snaps in a game, that you can't have this other guy or have one of these other younger drafted offensive linemen come in and make a difference either. We invest too much in the O-line over the years, so Zeitler is an immediate starter. Let Booker start at the other guard spot. Let Ratledge sit and learn. Doubt we do that, but perfect situation. Again, you can't have too much offensive line. It's kind of like pitching in Major League Baseball for me. You can't really have too much offensive line. You can't have too much starting pitching. And for me, you're probably going to need in any given season probably 8 to 9 good offensive linemen that you're going to be utilizing throughout the year. Now, sure, you'd love to have your offensive line start every game and make every snap, but it's not the way the NFL works. Injuries happen. It is a pretty tough sport as far as that's concerned, and offensive linemen are subject to quite a bit of that themselves. Now, say you have a really good center, for instance. Your guards could be a little bit younger and a little bit more inexperienced because your center can cover up a lot of the interior pass rush problems. If you have a really strong left tackle, maybe you beef up your tight end position if your right side is a little bit weak. There's ways that you can compensate for an offensive line, but when your offensive line group as a whole is not playing well together, which is what we saw a lot last year with the Texans, it really can derail your season. Now the Texans, luckily enough for them, have enough talent on the defensive side of the ball, and Stroud, who had a really strong rookie year, they were able to overcome a lot of that. But the reason why they didn't go deeper in the playoffs or have a better season overall is because of that offensive line play. So again, you can never have too much offensive line help. You're just waiting for Stingley's extension because it'll happen in the next month or two. You'd imagine, unless his agent tells him to wait. I would hope for that too if I'm a Texans fan. He's been good for them. As far as the rest of the NFL free agency, what I'm kind of paying attention to over the next 24 hours, one, where does Aaron Rodgers go? How does that affect Joe Milton's trade? What does that do as far as the draft? Is there going to be some changing as far as a destination for Cam Ward? Say somebody decides at the top of the draft, say the Titans decide, hey, we'd rather go Joe Milton route and spend their draft pick and trade it away and really recoup future assets and build that way, which might be the better way for them to go anyway. That would be something out of the blue, surprising. That would be kind of cool, essentially, to set up the NFL draft. But ultimately, I think Cam Ward will probably end up being the number one pick there. And then where does Shedeur Sanders ultimately end up? Does he end up going somewhere where he's going to be asked to be the day one starter? Or is he going to go somewhere where he is ultimately going to be the backup for a season and do kind of what Patrick Mahomes did behind Alex Smith? That might be best for his development, kind of get acclimated to the NFL, learn what it is to play behind a good offensive line, learn what it is to have a good running game. I think that would be the best situation for Shedeur Sanders. But there's a lot of teams out there that always answer the call when their fan base is clamoring for the rookie quarterback to get some snaps. It always inevitably happens. So we'll see where he goes. I'm just waiting for his team. Okay. I think Rodgers and Chubb to the Steelers would be the best for them, especially after Slay signing. They'd definitely be an old team, I will say that. They've been an old team for years, it seems like, but with Harris going, they need a running back. That'd be a good get. I do think Chubb still has one more good year left in him. Does he have a Derrick Henry level season? I don't know. As far as Rodgers, to me, he just looks washed. I know there are a lot of peripheral numbers anyway from last year that show he's still got some talent there, and I'm sure he's still got the ability to be a better than a rookie quarterback. I'll put it that way. But there's nothing that gives me hope for the future or hope that he could make a run in the postseason against some of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. You're saying the Steelers would have a better chance to win in a playoff series or a playoff game anyway with Rodgers as the quarterback against Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow. And if he goes to AFC, those are the teams he's going to be facing. And to me, the Steelers, while they don't have a quarterback, even if they did go with a different quarterback besides Aaron Rodgers, they would still be behind in that scenario. I'd rather go with an option that I could grow with. And I think we pretty much know what Aaron Rodgers is. I do think he's pretty much washed as far as what he can really do to elevate your team. And there's no guarantee that he even gets through an entire season, as injuries have continued to derail him over the last couple of years. So Rodgers, I think, would be an upgrade over what they currently have, sure, because they don't really have anything. I would rather go with Russell Wilson. He showed that he could handle that Pittsburgh environment and showed that he could be productive in that environment. Am I saying he's the best thing since sliced bread there? No. But I'd rather go with a Russell Wilson. I understand Pittsburgh kind of reading the back of the football card there and saying, oh, MVP Aaron Rodgers, Super Bowl champion Aaron Rodgers, best talented quarterback in NFL history, Aaron Rodgers. Sure, all that sounds exciting, but look at what he's done each of the last couple of years. Even what he did in his final couple of years in Green Bay. He has the ability to reach those highs, but by and large, that talent has kind of slipped out the door and injuries have creeped into his game. And even with some really great weapons last year, weapons on the outside featuring Devontae Adams, featuring Garrett Wilson, a running back like Breece Hall, and they still weren't able to get it done. Pittsburgh, you're saying an outside tandem of DK Metcalf and George Pickens is better than what he just had in Adams and Wilson? I don't think so. I like Pickens. I don't necessarily like DK Metcalf too much as far as his ability. And you're saying that situation is better? Freiermuth at as far as a tight end is a nice piece. I'd say it's fairly close to a wash with what the Jets were working with. But I'd say the running game is significantly better with the Jets before he got there and was worse after he got there. But we'll have to see how things work out there in Pittsburgh. Rodgers to Metcalf, if Rodgers bounces back, would go crazy. I don't necessarily think so. I just think he's trying to hold on for one more productive year so he can go out on a high note before he retires. Eventually, Steelers will have to bite the bullet and trade up for a quarterback. They might not have to. Maybe they could be a fit for Joe Milton. Maybe they could be a fit for Russell Wilson coming back in and salvaging another year or two with him. Maybe they decide to go the route of a free agent quarterback in a couple years. Maybe they decide to go the route of a Dak Prescott trade in a year or two. You don't want to lose Rodgers. He's the last quarterback of the golden years. Honestly, I'm ready to see him go. He was not a very good quarterback last year. I would rather see the era of Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Burrow, and all those quarterbacks really establish themselves and have the runway that Brady, Manning, Breeze, Rivers, Roethlisberger, Rodgers, that runway of quarterbacks. Now it's time for this younger group to get that same runway and same respect, and I'd like to see them kind of take over the league even more than they already have. Rodgers doesn't deserve MVP in 14, though. That was J.J. Watt's. Watt was pretty dang good, I will say that. All right, appreciate you guys joining us. Going to go ahead and just update and just see if anything else is happening. I'm kind of curious to see if we're going to get any actual signings from the Cowboys. They never act on day one in free agency, and they added 3 outside free agents yesterday. That was a little bit surprising. I think today they're going to be trying to figure out what they're going to do with their offensive line and with that starting cornerback. I do think that they need to get one of those spots filled before they get to the draft. They're still going to have a lengthy list to buy at the draft. That's why I do think the rumors out there that Dallas will be looking to trade down in the draft are very accurate. I still think they want to get premium value for those picks, but we'll see what they decide to do. I think they need to get at least a couple of day 2 picks out of the trade downs that I expect them to do and get at least 2 to 3 starters out of that group. I think they need to get a wide receiver 2 or 3, however you slice it. I think they need to get a running back. They need to address that offensive line. They need to get a long-term answer at cornerback because Deron Bland is set to be a free agent in a year or so. Trayvon Diggs has shown the injury has really sapped him. Now you've lost Jordan Lewis. You really only have one starter in Deron Bland right now on the outside. I don't count Trayvon Diggs because he hasn't shown the ability to stay healthy. So whether one of those guys is the starter, one of those guys is the nickel guy, or the guy you draft turns out to be the nickel this year, you need more depth at that corner spot. You need a starting linebacker. I think you can get that late in free agency, though. Maybe you draft it in the 5th round. There's a lot of talent that goes undrafted every year at that linebacker spot. You need a special teams ace after you lost another one this year. But we'll see what happens around the NFL. You miss Brady. I miss some of the great quarterback play that we saw from him. The last years of Brady, though, were a little tougher to watch, kind of like Rodgers is now. Get ready for Rangers baseball in an hour? Same. I'm about to go to lunch real quick with my lady and do that and have some fun with her. Today's my one day off during the week, so she deserves a little bit of my time. I know I love talking sports with you guys. I got a lot going on as far as changing careers still. Licensing, I'm getting a couple of different professional licenses behind the scenes. Changing some things up, making some additional content for videos, getting those season preview videos ready to go as well. But we'll be talking some baseball tonight, probably around 8, 9 o'clock. I might do it a little bit early tonight just so I can have the evening with my lady as well. So really appreciate her helping us out, get everything set, and helping out with the lighting and everything before we get to our live every single day. So really do appreciate her help. She deserves all the applause from you guys as well. She works very hard behind the scenes to make or to share the content that we have out there with you guys. A lot of the times when I'm at work and I don't have the ability to share the content, the videos that I've made for the day, she's the one that's actually posting those. So she deserves a round of applause for the work she does. I really do appreciate you, hun, and hope you're ready for lunch. I'm starving. But we'll be back tonight to discuss some baseball. Maybe we'll touch on a little bit of the NFL stuff as well. And then again, this Sunday we'll begin our sports talk show. We'll have the name of that. We'll release the name of that tonight in tonight's baseball episode for you guys as well. So be sure to join us tonight for MLB Hot Stove Daily at around 8, 9 o'clock. And we'll see you then. Y'all have a good one. Stay safe out there, everybody.